Okay, here we are, Monday night, the night of Yud Beis Kislev. Tonight's topic are dreams. Your dreams may be more than just dreams. This relates to last week's parsha, Yaakov's dream in Vayetze, and next week in Vayeshev we have Vayter dreams, the dreams of Yosef, the dreams of Paro's ministers, and then the following week we have the dreams of Paro. Punkt Vayishlach, where are the dreams? But being that next week in Mitzvah Shem is Yutas Kislev and the week after is Chanukah, we may not have a chance to speak about dreams on the week that the Torah speaks about dreams. So this is our best shot. In addition, you'll see this does relate to tonight specifically. Dreams relate to tonight, as we'll see. I want to begin with a story. There's going to be many stories tonight, although tonight is be'ikr a legal discussion, as we endeavor to do in these shiurim, halacha. But to dreams, by very essence, is an esoteric subject. So many interesting stories will come up as well. But in Mitzvah Shem, we have a fascinating discussion. One of the great Go'onim 200 years ago was Reb Mordechai Bennett, Maharam Bennett. He actually met with the Mittler Rebbe, and they had an interesting discussion. Reb Mordechai Bennett, they met in one of those holiday towns with the natural springs, I think it was Carlsbad. And Reb Mordechai Bennett asked about making a bracha on drinking water from one of those springs. If you're drinking for the fuah, for health, there's usually no reason to make a bracha. It's not for thirst, it's for health. And the Mittler Rebbe said, water from mayonis are different than all other medicines. Other medicines, the reason you don't make a bracha is because they're not perfectly healthy for you. They help in one area, but there's side effects, often side effects, right? But by these waters, these spring waters, even though you're drinking them not out of thirst, but for the fuah, being that they're healthy throughout, the entire body only gains. There is no negative side effects. It warrants a bracha. That was the psak the Mittler Rebbe gave. Very interesting. And he says Mordechai Bennett was maskim to him, to this psak of the. There aren't so many psakim. This is a psak the Mittler Rebbe gave. Very interesting. So this of Mordechai Bennett, so he was a rabbi for many years in Nikolsburg. In fact, he had been a student by Reb Shmelke, the great Reb Shmelke of Nikolsburg, right? Who everyone spoke about with tremendous respect. The Alter Rebbe has the famous story where he said Reb Shmelke was Machaya Mesim. The Vilna Gaon once said, he quoted the statement of Rava in Gemara, where Rava says, L'kulu islu pircha levar midishmul. Everyone I can have a kash on except for what Shmuel the Amoira says. So the Vilna Gaon quoted that comment. L'kulu, to all the Chassidic Rebbes I can be peirich. Levar midishmul, except for Shmuel. So Shmuel Shmelke of Nikolsburg. Everyone held him in great esteem. And he was a big Rosh Hashiva, a big Gaon. And the Mordechai Bennett studied under him, and then he was a rabbi in Nikolsburg. Reb Mordechai passed away, Reb Mordechai Bennett, and he was mamish, one of the greatest Go'onim in those times, Alter Rebbe's times, Mittler Rebbe's times. He passed away in a place called Lichtenstadt, and there's some mystery surrounding his burial. Apparently he was buried immediately in Lichtenstadt. And then when his town, Nikolsburg, the shul board, the town members, the Balabatim, the Rabban, they heard that their beloved rabbi was buried in another town he happened to be visiting when he passed. They were up in arms. They said, Reb Mordechai needs to be buried here. Apparently Reb Mordechai had requested prior to that to be buried in Nikolsburg near his Rebbe of Shmelke, and maybe had family there. I don't know. There were many reasons of why Reb Mordechai should be brought back to Nikolsburg. However, the Chever Kaddish of Lichtenstadt said, we were Zoiche. He passed away here, we buried here. You don't just move a tzaddik like that. So the question came to the Chassam Sofer. And he has a whole tshuva about it, discussing usually you don't move a mace unless there's compelling reasons. and maybe he gave it Savoy before he passed, or Kever Avoisov, and different reasons why you would do it. So the Chassam Sofer in the end of the letter, he says, in theory, he would take a pasken, the body should be moved, but he's hesitant to give the psak himself. Apparently, a couple months later, the Chassam Sofer gave a clear psak that they should move him to Nikolsburg, where he is buried today. So there was a bit of a mystery, like what happened that originally the Chassam Sofer was a bit hesitant, and then afterwards he was gung-ho all the way. So, as the story is told, that after a couple months that Reb Mordechai Bennett passed away, the Chassam Sofer has a dream. Reb Mordechai Bennett comes to him in a dream, and he says that my body must be moved to Nikolsburg. That's where I desire to be buried. The reason why I was buried in Liechtenstein for this half a year was because many years ago, I was engaged to a girl from this city for 6 months. And then I called it off, and she was terribly pained. So because of that, because of the anguish I caused her, it was decreed upon me, I'm going to spend 6 months in this city. It won't be during life, it'll be after death, okay? But that's it. 6 months I had to be interred in Liechtenstein. He tells the Chassam Sofer the 6 months are over. It's time to move me along. That is the tradition of what happened. So the Chassam Sofer, upon this dream, he acted halachically, because moving a body is very serious. And, okay, so you can say the Chassam Sofer originally felt that he should move the body, he was just a bit hesitant. This was just the cream on the cake. It was just, it helped tip the scale. But nonetheless, he didn't say the dream was just a dream. It's just a dream. No, he felt it was important, and he acted. And he paskened the din that we're going to move the body, which is a serious halacha, and this dream played a factor. It definitely played a factor. It played a factor. Okay. That's that. The reason why it relates to tonight is because in number one, we have the Rishimus. In Detroit, on the 12th of Kislev, it's got to be the biggest Farbrengen of the entire year, right? They stay up all night. There's a whole night Farbrengen. Why? What are we going to hear? Because something that the Rebbe wrote in his Rishimus dated tonight, the 12th of Kislev. And the Rebbe writes that my father-in-law, the Friedrich Rebbe, told me, for my dream today, Volst gedarft geben Mashke, you should give me Mashke. The Friedrich Rebbe tells the Rebbe. Gib mir a kush, give me a kiss, geben Mashke, give Mashke, und anheben lernen Chassidus, and let's begin learning Chassidus. The Rebbe says, I wanted to kiss him on his hand, he showed me his forehead, and then he kissed me on the cheek. And then he told me what the dream was. He said, I had a dream. The Friedrich Rebbe says that my father, the Rebbe Rashab, came to me and said, Was bist du zerbrochen? Why are you so broken? But dir in Stub is lichtig bei Nacht. By you in your house, it's lichtig at night. It's bright in your house. Why are you downcast? It's bright in your home. And the Friedrich Rebbe continued, I woke up from the dream and I saw the moon was shining in my room. But I realized that's not the light my father was talking about. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, Halachti, I went to the cheder of the Sfarim and I saw you learning. And I realized that's what my father meant.
What year was it?
I don't remember. You have to check the Rishimus. I don't remember the year. But that's what the Rebbe Rashab meant. It's by dir is lichtig in Stub. It's light in your home. The Rebbe is sitting and learning. You know, when my parents moved to Australia in the early 80s, so when they moved there, they originally stayed in the home of Rabbi Groner, Oliver Shalom, who, when he hosted them for a while, and Rabbi Groner said that one night, it was the middle of the night, for some reason he couldn't sleep, he went out of bed and he went out to where his Sfarim were, and he saw my father sitting and learning in the middle of the night. Isn't that beautiful? Anyhow, so it says lichtig bei dir in Stub. It says lichtig bei dir in Stub. So, and the entry of this Rishimus is the 12th of Kislev, tonight. So it's a big night in some sects of Chabad in Lubavitch, Shebe Lubavitch. that the Rebbe macht lichtig, the Rebbe radiates, it's lichtig. How could the chassid be downcast? There's so much light. The Rebbe gives off so much light. Anyhow, but that's a dream of a Rebbe. A Rebbe has a dream, of course it's meaningful. In Parshas Beloischa, the Eibishter says, I speak to prophets, b'chaloim adaber, I speak to them in dreams. Which actually some of the Maram HaKomis here are out of order, seriously out of order. But if you look at number 16 on the third page, a well-known statement in Masechta Brachos, the last parak, which is, there's 3 daf of Gemara, they're all about chaloim. It's very interesting information about interpretations of chaloimus and what chaloimus may mean. In number 16, the Gemara quotes a famous statement of Shmuel and then of Rava. Shmuel, ki have a chazi chalma, when Shmuel saw a dream, bish, a bad dream, we're number 16. When Shmuel had a negative dream, Amar, he said, v'chaloimus hashov yidaberu. A pasuk in Zechariah. Dreams speak falsehood. So you had a scary dream, you had a frightening dream. Azvas, dreams are meaningless. It says in Zechariah, Chaloimus hashav yedaberu. Chaloimus spell nothing. It's rubbish. It's garnished. But ki have a chazi chelma tova, when Shmuel saw a good dream, Omer, he said, V'chi achaloimus hashav yedaberu. He would read that pasuk in a tmiyah, like a question. Do you think dreams are rubbish? The pasuk in Zechariah says chaloimus hashav with a hey. Often when a word starts with a chataf patach under a hey, it means that you're meant to sing it in a questionable tone. Ha-chaloimus hashav, do you think they speak shav? No, it says in Baloischa b'chaloim adaber boy. God says, I speak to prophets in dreams. So when Shmuel had a good dream, he quoted the pasuk b'chaloim adaber boy. God speaks in a dream. It's a prophecy. If it's a negative dream, you would quote the pasuk in Zechariah, Chaloimus hashav yidaberu. Right? What a great attitude in life. But the Gemara then says, Rava actually asked, so how do those 2 psukim taka make sense? Rava raised a contradiction. Ksiv, it says, B'chaloim adaber, by speaking a dream. Uksiv v'chaloimus hashav yidaberu, that chaloimus are a waste of time. So loy kasha, says Rava, it's not a kasha. And here's a big key to the whole discussion about dreams. Kan al yedei malach, kan al yedei shade. It depends who's giving you the dream. If it's coming from a malach, it's a prophecy. If it's coming from a shade, shav yudaberu. Like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, that these dreams can come from shadim, and they send the most ridiculous ideas into your brain, and they're laughing. They're laughing as you're living through it, thinking it's real, and they're just laughing. And really, it's all one big Baba Maisa. But that's if it's Al Yedei Shade. But if it's through a Malach, it's a prophecy. Okay. Having said that, there is also a difference. In Hilchas Shabbos, Siman Reish Peiches, dreams are discussed. Because if somebody has a negative dream which carries a serious, frightening omen, there's an idea to fast. Because they're showing you from heaven that you're in hot water, rectify yourself and get yourself out of the hot water, do tshuva. So fast, what better way to do tshuva is there to fast? It's not the only way to repent, but it definitely can inspire repentance. Right. So you fast, and the question is, what about fasting on Shabbos? The Alter Rebbe rules that fasting on Shabbos, even just by day, so you ate at night, but you fasted by day, is an Isur D'oraisa. Even though the Sholosh Sudas, having 3 Sudas, is a debate if it's a Mitzvah D'oraisa to have 3 Sudas on Shabbos, or it's only D'Rabbanan. But Pashtus is only D'Rabbanan, but fasting would be D'oraisa, which raises the when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos, the mitzvah to eat on Shabbos should push away the Isser of fasting in Yom Kippur, which is an old question, one of the old questions they ask. There's many answers to that question. But the Alter Rebbe rules that fasting on Shabbos is an Isser D'oraisa. Even if the meals themselves are D'Rabbanan and the bread is D'Rabbanan, the Lechem Mishnah, but the fasting could be D'oraisa. Nonetheless, one is allowed to fast if he has a bad chalom Friday night. because it's urgent to do it that day. It needs to be that day to remedy. There's an Issa Deraisa to fast. So the Alter Rebbe explains, why is it also Deraisa to fast? Because of the mitzvah of Oinig, to enjoy yourself. Oinig is subjective, it's not objective. V'samachta ein simcha ela b'basar ein simcha ela b'yayin may be objective. It has to be meat and wine. Of course, there's the famous Shagas Aryeh who says that, no, maybe anything that makes you happy could work. But oinig is different, inherently different. If someone had a horrible dream, for a foreboding dream Friday night, eating the next day, they will walk around completely agitated from that dream. What type of oinig Shabbos? Whereas if they fast, knowing the fast can heal them from and can save them from that dream, so that itself will give them oinig. So then the oinig flips around. For them, the oinig is actually to fast. Regularly, you like to eat, so if you don't, it's Issa Deraisa. But in this case, actually, Oinig Shabbos would demand to fast. And over there, the Alter Rebbe brings from Rishonim that it's only if the dream occurred 3 times. Even a foreboding dream, a negative dream, there's a difference if you have it once or 3 times. To be able to fast on Shabbos, there's a Yesh Omrim that it needs to be the 3rd time having the dream. Having it once, you could fast the first time if you want, but to be able to fast on Shabbos, only 3. There's a big difference once versus 3. There are so many stories, right, of people that had one dream and then it's meaningless. But if it recurs, if it repeats itself, then it's serious. Then it's serious. As when the Alter Rebbe was younger than Bar Mitzvah, the Alter Rebbe wrote a commentary on Chumash, where he summarized Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra. And the Alter Rebbe has a dream where he was sitting in the Beis Medrash of Liozhana, in the Cheder Sheni, in the small room, and he's summoned to the main Beis Medrash. And he enters the main Beis, or the main Beis Knesses, and he was summoned. There were 3 Dayanim sitting there with Talesim. They were the judges, and then the Toivim, the plaintiffs, were there too. There were 3 venerable rabbis. The Alter Rebbe asked, who are these rabbis? And the judges said, it's Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra. And they're suing you. Because you took all of their good work, you made a new sefer out of it. Now who's going to read Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra? They'll just, your sefer is 3 in 1. It's rewritten, probably much easier than the way the Ibn Ezra writes. So yeah, just go straight there. And the Alter Rebbe panicked and he cried and he said he'll burn it. And then they benched him. The 3 Rishonim, Rashi, Ramban, Ibn Ezra benched him, that he'll teach Yidden how to serve Hashem till Mashiach comes. And he woke up. And he had the dream a few times. It was only after he had the dream a few times did he actually go and burn it. Burn the manuscripts. Now burning manuscripts is not so posh, especially if it's real Torah. You can't burn manuscripts. But the Rashi, in Seder HaDoros, it says that when Rashbam began to write his commentary on Gemara, and his Seder Rashi saw it, Rashi said, you got to burn this stuff, this is no good. This is too lengthy, too elaborate. And he burnt it, yeah. By the way,
was that a dream or that was in life?
that was alive, according to that story, it was alive. Alive. That's if it's necessary for the covet of Torah. The Shavus Yankov is a famous letter. You're even allowed to burn, it could be Shemus that has names of God, perhaps, if it's for the sake of the covet of the names of God. Like things on the floor and people are trampling upon them, and you burn it for their own honor, you're allowed to. And he learns it actually from the fact that they burned Shaul's body. According to one opinion, they cremated him in order that the Plishtim wouldn't get hold of his body and abuse it. So you're allowed to burn an item if it's for its own protection, then it's considered honorable. It's not considered destructive, it's productive. So he compares the story of Shaul to Shemus. Anyhow, it's interesting because the Alter Rebbe later in life once said, if the Chassidim would leave me alone, I would have time, I would write a commentary on the entire Shas. It would be so clear you wouldn't even need to come on to Rashi. It would be so clear, and I feel it's a Piddush Rashi, you wouldn't need Rashi's Piddush. So everyone asks, how could Alter Rebbe have said that? Didn't he learn his lesson from what happened years before when he was a kid? And he burnt his commentary. So doesn't he know he can't do this? So when we had this discussion when we were younger bochrim, and my good friend Rabbi Menashe Wolf, a shliach in West Park Slope, we asked him, and immediately he said, "Come on, you can't compare the two things." By Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra, he took their ideas and he rewrote them in a new format. So now there's no reason to go back to the source. The ideas are here. But by the Gemara, the Alter Rebbe wasn't saying, "I'll rewrite Rashi's commentary. I'll write a new commentary, a different commentary. It'll be so clear you won't need Rashi, but it's not identical to Rashi. So if you want to see what Rashi says, go see what Rashi says. It's different." People will still have a reason to go see Rashi in the source. But by the Chumash commentary, there'll be no reason to go back to the source. It's all going to be there. I will just add, based on our shir from the other week, in the Chumash story, the Alter Rebbe was being sued for plagiarism. For plagiarism. He rewrote their ideas. Whereas by the Gemara, there's no plagiarism. It's his own commentary, and it might look different than Rashi. Anyhow, so there is a difference of how many times you see a dream as well. But in number 16, the Rava said, some dreams are prophecies, some of them are just rubbish. So, I said that even the first time, what would be the vort of 3 times? It could be once you have it 3 times, that demonstrates it's coming from a malach. In other words, it could be you need to see it 3 times to know that it's really coming from a malach. However, join me in number 3, a Gemara in Brachas, in Daf Yud actually, in the first perek. Amar Rabbi Chanan, even if the Baal HaChaloimus Oimeloi tells a person, L'machar hu meis, imagine you had a dream. Baal HaChaloimus is the malach that's in charge of your dreams. The malach. There's shadim that can send you dreams, and then there's malachim, like Rava said. But here Rabbi Chanan says, there's someone called the Baal HaChaloimus. Now Rashi in Gemara says it's a sar, it's a master. So I don't know, maybe there's 2 Baal HaChaloimus. One that represents the malachim, one that represents the shadim. That's unclear. But even if Baal HaChaloimus tells a person, L'machar hu meis, you had a dream at night, tomorrow you're dying. Al yimna atzmei min harachimim, do not hold yourself back from davening to Hashem. It's not over. It's not like the game's over. Shneimar, there's a pasuk, ki b'roiv chaloimus v'avolim udvorim harbe, even with all of the dreams and all this other mishugas and kiyas lekim yiro, you fear God and you can be protected. We learn from there that tefillah can protect you even against a dream from the Baal HaChaloimus. So this Gemara definitely is telling you when the Baal HaChaloimus tells you something, it's meaningful. And Rav Chanan is saying, you might have thought it's all over, I'm dying tomorrow, that it's a full prophecy. No, you can change it. The Vilna Gaon writes that this Gemara refers to whether it's a malach or a shade. If it's a shade, it's rubbish. So the Vilna Gaon's opinion is, if a shade gives you a dream, but the dream spells imminent disaster, then even if it comes from a demon, it's a prophecy. This dream in number 3 is imminent disaster. Tomorrow you're going to die. So even if this came from a shade, it's still meaningful. And you need a daven, but don't worry, davening can free you. So that changes things. So that means not everything that comes from a shade is rubbish. It also means he's interpreting Baal HaChaloimus doesn't necessarily mean an angel. Baal HaChaloimus, maybe there's one for the angels, one of the shadim. It's unclear, but the Vilna Gaon says this Gemara is even true if it's a shade, because it's imminent punishment, imminent danger, imminent death. It's a real omen. Fine. So you have that Gemara. Then you have a famous Gemara in Sanhedrin in number 2. This is probably the most famous Gemara about dreams, especially for Lubavitchers who learn Rambam, because the Rambam writes his halacha twice.
Today's Rambam.
Hare shero esavian. If the children saw their father hit min mois, he hid money. Beshida is a wagon. Teva, a box, a migdal, was another type of box. Yeah, the Omar shall ploini hein. And the father said, you see this money I'm hiding, it belongs to your uncle. Or shall Ma'aser Sheni, the Ma'aser Sheni money had to be brought to Jerusalem and spent over there. on food. So im kamoiser, if it looks like he was being serious, and dvarav kayom, his words are kayim, and if he dies, you can't keep that money. You have to do with it as he described. But im kamayim, if it looks like he was being cheeky, he just wanted the kid. He didn't want the kids to take the money. They could tell on the father's face he wasn't being serious. So loyam aklum is taka. Then the words are valueless. They can later come and take the money. If the father dies, they inherit it, it's their money. Next case. What if you know your father left you money, but you're mitzstar al mois, your father left you money, you don't know where it is. You knew your father there was a safe in the house full of money, and you can't find it anywhere. So your father, who knows where he dug it, somewhere in the backyard, who knows where it is. The Baal HaChaloim came. The Amaloi and said, you're looking for your father's money? Kach v'kachein. This is the amount. $15 million cash. But Makam Pliny Hain. I'll tell you where it is. Under the tree. You dig underneath, it's there. But Shel Meiser Sheni Hain. But the money is Meiser Sheni. You need to take it to Jerusalem and spend it on food. You can't buy the new yacht that you wanted to buy. Zeh Hoya Meiser. This was an actual story. So a guy came to the rabbis, what do I do? Because he found the money. It was exactly the amount and exactly where it was told to him in the dream. But they also told him in the dream it's Meiser Sheni. The Omri, you know what the rabbi said? Divrei chaloimus loy mailen v'loy meridin. Dreams are irrelevant. Irrelevant. It was dead. It was dead on as far as the amount and the location. And yet the identity of the money, we say the dream is rubbish. But this is definitely not a rubbish dream. So the Rambam paskens this, and the Magid Mishnah immediately explains. There's an idea that every dream has dvarim b'telim. Every dream has dvarim b'telim. So maybe the dvarim b'telim of this dream was the fact that it's Meiser Sheni money. The dream was a mix of good and bad. The good was what you verified to be true, the location and the amount. But maybe the dvarim b'telim is where it's the identity of the money. And the Meiri says the same thing. What's this based on? It's based on a Gemara number 10. Go to the second page, number 10. Get me a little bit out of order here, but don't worry, we'll figure it out. In number 10, it's a Gemara in the last parak of Brachas, again the parak all about the dreams. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyah, Hanavi asher iter chaloim, a prophet that speaks, that has a dream, Yisaper chaloim, will say a dream. But the one that actually has my word, Yitaber divrei emes. Like you have the false prophet who says he had a dream, but the one that speaks my words is divrei emes. So, and then the pasuk says, "Ma'ala teven esabor." How can you compare straw with actual grain? Right? The guy who has his false dream is just straw, but the one that speaks my words is grain. So the Gemara wants to know why the Eibush particularly choose this vort of grain and straw. What's the connection of straw and grain, particularly to a dream? So Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rashbi, just like it's impossible to have grain without straw, so to EF Shalach Chaloim below Dvarim B'Telem. Chaloim must also have Dvarim B'Telem. Amar Abrechia, that Chaloim said a similar statement. Afal Pisha Miktsasa Miskayim Kulayena Miskayim. Rabbi Rechia says a dream, even if part of it is fulfilled, not all of it. Minalon mi Yosef, not a tzaddik like Yosef, who l'chayri his dreams were prophecy. The Ramban, the Rosh, there's big discussion in the Rishon that Yosef's dreams were prophecy. And that's why Yosef had to relay his dreams. Because otherwise he would be like a prophet that's kovish his nevuah, he had to relay his dreams. And that's why the Ramban writes that Yosef had to put his brothers through what he put them through in Parshas Miketz in order that the dreams of them bowing down to him should become true. So it's like a prophecy. Nonetheless, even Yosef's dreams, not all of it was fulfilled. Dichsiv, v'hine hashemesh v'ayarech v'gim, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars. But the 11 stars were his brothers. That became true. They did prostrate themselves. The sun is his father. The moon would have been his mother, Rachel. She had already passed away. So the Gemara says the dream had Dvarim B'Telem. Now, in Medrash Rabbah it says it wasn't Dvarim B'Telem because the moon refers to Bilah, Rachel's maidservant who raised Yosef. So the Marsha and many Mefarshim discuss if this is a debate between the Gemara and the Medrash, because if it refers to Bill, it's not Dvarim B'Telim. And then Fakert, you'd see that a prophecy in a dream is fully true. As you would assume that when it says in Ba'aloischa B'Chaloim Adaber Hashem speaks to a prophet in a dream, that type of dream you can't expect there should be Dvarim B'Telim. It's a prophecy. How could there be Dvarim B'Telim? And according to the Ramban the Rosh, it seems like Yosef's dreams were a prophecy. So then the Medrash would work well that the dream was foolproof. The moon refers to Bila. But Rabrechia here in the Gemara says no, there were Dvarim B'Telim. Al Kapanim, back to our discussion. So the Magid, Mishnah, and the Meiri say that this dream that the Baal HaChalayim came and told you about the money, it's a wonderful dream, but it's grain with a bit of straw, and not everything is true. Maybe the part that's wrong is the identity of the money. Now it's a maybe. It's only a maybe, but nonetheless you're allowed to rely on that maybe, and the children can take that $15 million and go on a shopping spree. So that's what that Gemara says in Sanhedrin, that the dream is worthless. The issue is, if you look in number 4 is a Gemara in the Dorim, where the Gemara says in Daf Ches, Amar Rav Yosef, Nidu b'chaloim, if someone had a dream and in your dream you were excommunicated. If you put in nidui, a type of chayrim in your dream, tzarich yud b'nei adam, you need 10 people lahatiloi, which is more serious than usual. Usual in nidui, you don't need 10 people, 3 people, or even a yachid mumcha, or the person that put you in chayrim can undo it. But if you had a dream that you were put in chayrim, in nidui, you need, when you wake up, you need 10 people to undo it. And not just Avuhu, the Tano Hilchus, so they have to be Talmudic scholars, they have to have learned Gemara. Avo Masnu, if they only learned Mishnah, the Loi Tano, but not Gemara Loi. If you had 10 people that learn Mishnah, it won't help you. You need 10 people that learn Gemara. Right, Bachman? So, you hope if somebody walks into Zal and says, I need 10 guys that learn Gemara, no one's going to say, sorry, I'm still stuck in the Mishnah. V'ileka the Tanu Hilchus, if there's no one, if you don't have, then afilu masnu. If you don't have Gemara, then at least get 10 guys that learn Mishnayos. V'ilech, what if you don't have that? Go and sit at Prosh's Drachim by the crossroads and say hello to 10 people. That will protect you until you can find 10 people that have learned Gemara. You have to round them up as long as it takes. And only then they can be materit. So Ravina said to Rav Ashi, yeah, but what if Yod man shamse? What if in your dream you know the person that put you in chayim is alive? So when you wake up, can you go to him and let him be materit by himself? Because usually if you were excommunicated during your wake hours by an individual, you could just go to that person, he can undo it. So if you were put in chayim in your dream, and you know who the person was, right? And is alive, so when you wake up, go to him. Mahu, delishrile, can that person undo it? So Rav Ashi said, no. L'shamuse shav yishliach. The fact he was haunting you in your dreams means he was sent by heaven to excommunicate you. Who said he was authorized by heaven to undo it? L'mishrile lo shav yishliach. That you don't know if he was authorized. So Rav Acha said to Rav Ashi, what if in the dream they put you in chayim and they undid it? So in the dream you were put in chayim, but it was also undone. You know what Rav Ashi said? It won't help. Every dream has dvarim b'telim. Maybe the dvarim b'telim was the undoing of the chayim. Just like you can't have bar, grain without straw, kachi efshel chaloim without dvarim b'telim. Rav Ashi was very machmir, right? Very machmir. You would think if the whole thing's a dream, so if it's a true dream, if it's not a true dream, so I was never put in chayim. If it's true, it was undone. Now, maybe the first part was true, but the second part, the undoing, wasn't. So this Gemara tells you very clearly that if you were put in chayim in your dream, it's very, very serious. What happened to divrei chaloim misloim ma'ilin v'loim meridin? In number 2 in Sanhedrin, by the Ma'aser Sheni, keep the money, don't worry. You had a dream, who cares about the dream? And over here, we put you mamash, you have to honor the chayrim. Mamash, honor the chayrim. Not just that, but look in number 8. There's a Ran. The Ran over there in the Dodim says, just like you can't have bar, you can't have grain without straw. Like the Pasuk says in Yirmiyah, the thing we saw in Gemara Brachas. Look at the end of the line. The Tzarech, he says, I'm not sure, says the Ran. If you were putting chayim in your dream, it's true you need to undo it. That's what the Gemara says. But until you undo it, are you chayiv in all the laws of someone who's in chayim? Right? Can't get a haircut, and lots of different things. Im tzarech linog, does he have to be noyeg b'chol dinei menuda, all the dinim of nidui? He's not sure. But then he says, umistabili, it seems to me, afal gav dar mino, even though we say here that if you're nuduhu b'chaloima, if people put you in chayim in the dream, you need to undo it. You can't learn from here if you made a neder in your dream. What if you make a vow in your dream? You make a vow in your dream and you wake up and it's like so clear you made a vow. Do you have to honor the neder? He says no. He says, I don't think you have to be matir the neder. Now he says why? Why? He says there's a big difference between the nidui versus the neder. What's the difference? Dahacha hainu time. You know why here you have to be concerned for the chedim? Mishum de'ikol ameimer shemin hashamayim niduhu. The fact you had a dream about being put in chayrim, you know what that demonstrates? You're in hot water. Why would they show you such a thing? So if it came from the shadim, the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, they're laughing at you. It's a real good. They're really getting you sharp. They're laughing, and you wake up in a cold sweat, think you're put in chayrim. That's a possibility. On the other hand, ikol ameimar, he said, it could be the Ran when he says ikol ameimar, he's being medayik. The taka, you could say it's dvorim b'telim. It's definitely possible. But also you could say that this is from a malach, right? And that means there's a sign from heaven, that in heaven they put you in chayrim. Masha'ein loimer came, but by neder you can't say that. The laws of nedarim is you have to say the neder verbally, and it needs to be piv v'lib by shavin. You have to know what you're saying, right? Can't be. If you wanted to make a neder from one item and you said something else, so then it doesn't count. You have to know what you're saying. Now, if in mind you think that it's just a joke, that doesn't count. For that we say dvarim shebelei veinam dvarim. If you know what you're saying and you make a neder, but in your mind you think, hey, I'm just kidding around, then the joke's on you. Then we apply the rule dvarim shebelei veinam dvarim. That doesn't count. But if you wanted to say A and you accidentally said B, then the neder doesn't count. Because it's not piv v'lib shav, and your mind and heart weren't together. But you need to verbalize. You need to verbalize it, and your heart has to be with you. In the dream, first of all, you said it in your dream. Who knows? Maybe you did say it. Maybe you were sleep talking, but you're unaware of it. Your mind isn't working. You can't say it's a neder. But then he says, "Ro'isi that the Raj bezal b'tshuva shemaisa bo lefonav." But the Ran says, "Hang on." The Rashba, who's before the Ran. The Ran, kind of next generation after the Rashba, he was very young when the Rashba passed away. He says that by the Rashba story once happened, someone had a dream where he made a vow. And he asked the Rashba what to do, and the Rashba was matzrichim, Rabbi, you have to get a heter, ataras nedarim. Right, so someone comes in, he pulls a few of the guys together, hataras nedarim, for the neder. What was the neder? I can't remember exactly, it was in his dream. What are you doing? The Rashba. The Ran says no. So it seems from the Ran that just like the neder is worthless, that's the reason why by the Meiser Sheni is worthless. Meaning, by the it's not exactly the same, because by the neder it makes sense it's worthless, because how could the neder apply? He didn't say, he didn't mean it. But it could, but from what the Ran says about the chayrim, there it makes sense to divide between that and the Meiser Sheni. By the chayrim, why would they show you in heaven you were put in chayrim? By the Meiser Sheni, dreams have dvarim b'telim. So some of it was true, the location and the amount, but the identity could be the dvarim b'telim. But here, why would they show you from heaven you were put in chayrim? Rabbi Asher Weiss believes that the pshat in the Ran is that you can't use a dream to collect knowledge, to collect information. For that, the dream is worthless. You have a dream about some information, about something that happened somewhere, sometime, somehow. Knowing it through a dream is worthless. But by the chayrim, it's not that the dream is telling you, a story that happened. This is the cherem. The dream is not telling you that somebody else was put in cherem and you didn't get a phone call, you didn't get a message, but you could know it through the dream. No, here the dream itself is the cherem. That's how the Basher Weiss understands the Ran. But either way, from the Ran, it seems like it's specifically by cherem, nowhere else. But the Rashba does say it applies by a neder. However, some believe that the Rashba also says neder is unique, because the halacha is if you make a neder for tzedakah, you don't actually have to verbalize it. If you just have it in your mind, it's good enough. And the Rashba is going to say, if you dreamt about it at night, maybe you thought about it by day. Often your dreams at night is because of what you thought about by day. So if you dreamt about giving the tzedakah at night, or taking a neder to give it tzedakah at night, then it's very likely that you actually had that thought sometime during the day. And then it's binding because of what you had during the day, because you had the thought during the day, and by tzedakah you don't have to verbalize it. So according to this chap in the Rashba also holds that the dreams are only unique in neder, but it wouldn't be by Ma'aser Sheni. That's one approach. Another one is a famous letter of the Rashpats. A famous letter of the Rashpats in number 5. The Rashpats was one of the last of the Rishonim. Passes away in the early 1400s, or early mid-1400s. He was a student of the Divosh. The two of them were in Spain. And after the 1391 pogroms in Spain, they were out of there. They dashed to Algeria, to Algiers. And there was although the Rashpats was the student, the Vosh was the Rebbe, there was a little bit of friction between the two. We'll see an interesting story that relates to that. But the Rashpats has the same kasha. The Rashpats wants to know the same kasha. What's going on by the cherem case in the Dorim? We go, hoo-ha! That it's mamish serious. And by the Ma'aser Sheni in Sanhedrin, we say, the dream was just a joke. So the Rashpat says like this. I have an answer. He says, I've proved in number 5, after we've seen, it's a long letter, after we've seen the words of the Gemara, and logic dictates as well, that some chalomis are true and you should be concerned. Other chalomis are rubbish and you shouldn't be concerned. Yesh v'yesh, yesh v'yesh. So therefore, if you have a dream, you have a suffix. Let's say by the Ma'aser Sheni dream, or by the Nidui dream. You're not sure. Is this one of the tzayidkim? Is this one of the dreams that are true, or one of them that aren't? So how are you? So what do you do? She says like this: it's known when it comes to monetary matters. Whenever you have a suffix by monetary matters, whether I should give it or keep it, you keep it. You don't change the status quo of something unless you have proof, evidence. By all chazaka demikar, you have a status quo. And then there's a 50-50. Did it change or did it remain the same? If you want to change something, the burden of proof rests on you. And so too by cheskas mamon, if somebody is holding the money, and you're not sure does he owe it or not, every suffix by money is a kula lenitva, it's lenient for the one holding the money, for the defendant. It's a chumra l'toveya. The plaintiff has to bring the raya that he deserves it. So by all money, we leave the money which has a suffix where it is. He said every dream's a suffix if it's real. So by the Ma'aser Sheni money, it's a monetary question. Is it our father's cash or is it Ma'aser Sheni? Is it ours for inheritance, or we got to take it to Yerushalayim? It's a suffix on the money. So Valzeh Amru, by that person that was paying on the money of his father, that don't worry about the dream. Leave the money b'chezkasa in its status like it was before the dream. Because in this instance, divrei chalomis loy ma'ilin v'loy meridin, to remove money from its status. Go down a couple lines. But someone who has a dream in a cherem, she says, if it was from an angel, it's a real cherem. But if it's from a shade, it's not a cherem. Okay, so he says clearly, by the Gemara and the Dorim, by the shade, and it could be the Ran hinted to it in number 8, when he said, Ikala it's 50-50. It could be the dream is from a malach, and then it's real, it's authentic, and then you're talking cherem. It could be from those demons laughing at you, and they're stopping having a good time, causing you to sweat, just to agitate you. So then in your 50-50 in cherem, Safik menuda, Safik eina menuda, it's a Safik of cherem. Chayrim is an Isser. If you're in Chayrim, there's a prohibition that rests upon you, and how other people have to treat you, and how you're allowed to act, and your obligation to remove the Chayrim. It's a Suffolk Isser. If it's also to take a haircut and to wash your clothes and to distance yourself from people 4 hours, there's lots of dinim. It's a Suffolk in Isser Vehet in the do's and don'ts of Judaism, not in monetary law. And because it's 50-50, you need to undo it, like every Suffolk Isser, that you're able to remove yourself from doubt. There's a way to remedy it. So you find 10 people. Fine. And he finishes off, Zehu Masha Allah biyadenu. This is his answer that he gives. It's a different answer than we explained in the Ran. He believes the Ma'aser Sheni is a monetary issue. All of these dreams, every dream is a suffix if it's real or not. So by money, you leave the money where it is. If there's a mamash and Isser question, you got to be machmer. That's the take of the Rashbats. And he writes something, look at the next page in number 12. In the letter, he quotes an anecdote. In number 12, he says, V'da, you should know. Number 12, it's almost 20 years. Cholam Chaloim, Chakun ben Avoy. There's a guy called Chakun ben Avoy. Okay? If you didn't realize, he is a Sephardi living in Spain. Ibn Abu. Asher Hayoim, that today he's not from anymore. Yotzal Atar Basra. About 20 years ago, he had a dream. You know what his dream was? That the Tzibur Chayovim Lisan, he had a dream that the community has to fast 3 fasts. He had a dream that the community better fast or else. Monday, Thursday, Monday. Okay, one guy had a dream. No one else had the dream. This guy had a dream. So you would think, first of all, dreams are nothing. And even if it's something, well, everyone else is bound by this guy's dream. Rav Yitzchak Bar Sheshes, the Rivosh, Choshesh, he was concerned. And he made the whole community fast. Because of one guy's dream. The Gaza 3 tainas. Va'atoroya, and says the Rashbats, Rav Shimon Bar Tzemach, the student of the Rivosh, that guy, the big dreamer, right, the big prophet, now is not from. It shows retroactively he wasn't having no prophecies 20 years ago. Gam ba'oisa perek, he wasn't in a good state in Judaism. So just because of his dream, the Rivosh should not have been geyser the fast. He said the Rivosh was out of line. You don't make the whole community fast because one guy has a dream. But as he says, the Tzibur, the whole community was laughing. As it happened, the Tzibur was laughing, and they all called it a Tainus Chaloim. The whole town referred to those fasts as dream fasts. And when it came to davening mincha, right? So they wanted like you doing a fast day. They couldn't find a minyan. Kiyim b'kush, you barely find a minyan. The whole town thought it was a joke. And the Rivosh Taka, he had charata on his decision. Says the Rashbats, I fasted. Because I would say that I know about myself, I'm not a kohen. But if my friends would say, go and duchen, I would go duchen. That's a Gemara in Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi says that I know I'm not a kohen, but I always listen to my contemporaries. If they would tell me to go duchen, I would duchen. Which explains the story of the Alter Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe called up one of his chassidim, who was not a kohen, the Alter Rebbe called him up as a kohen. And from then on, he treated himself as a kohen. Even though, who kohen, what kohen? From then on, he was a kohen niduchent. Based on this Gemara, that Rabbi Yossi said that I'm not a kohen, but if I was told by my friends to duchen, I would duchen. So the Rashbats quotes that here as if to say that whatever the Rivosh would tell me to do, I would do. So he said fast, so I fasted. But he said it was not very honorable. Now, why did the Rivosh do this? It's because of what he told us that in Valencia, where he was born, a guy called Shloime Matis came and told him, you have to be geyser a fast because there's soon going to be a Shreifa Gedoyla, there's going to be something awful will happen in your house. And the Rivosh left, he wasn't choshesh to this guy's dream. But then it all happened. And then the Rivosh was nischaret al that when he saw that the chaloim happened exactly as it was told. So first Rivosh was not concerned to the dream, and he was nischaret. He had charata. Years later, He pushes the community to fast because of the dream, and then his nischara tells her. So what's the hira? Whatever the rabbi do is going to have charata. You never get it right. Whatever you do. Whatever the rabbi does, right. So this is the answer of the Rashbats. So according to him, chalomus are really serious. It's only by monetary cases where they're worthless. Like often we like to quote these Rambams. You write twice, right? In Hilchas Chiyum Matona, right, that we're learning, and in the Hilchas Meiser Sheni, where he brings the Divrei Chalomus are nothing. Well, the Rashbat says it's only by monetary matters. By Yisurim, it's very serious. The Chayre, the Rashbats, I don't know, you might hold like the Rashba about the Neder. Neder might be different, you have to verbalize, but there's room to say he holds like the Rashba. But from the Ran, it seems like the other way, that the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that's the classical case. Chalomus are worthless. It's only by the Chayrim, where it's a heavenly message putting you in Chayrim, you have to be concerned. But Stam, other Isurim, like a Neder or other things, the dream would be worthless. So if that's the case, and there's a huge difference of the Ran and the Rashbats, which Gemara is the one you can extrapolate from, and which one is the exception? Right. Okay, so we continue our journey. We continue our journey about dreams. There was a Yid, 150 years ago, born to a frum family in Russia. But in his teenage years, he acquired for himself some nicht gute Freund, some not good friends, and they schlepped him very far off the path. He marries a Goyish woman, has a Goyish family. He was an entertainer, a performer. I don't know, weddings, at celebrations for the Goyim, he was an entertainer. He would come and juggling fire, I don't know, 5, 6 sticks of fire, who knows what he did. He sang, I don't know, comedian. And that's what he did for Parnasa, I guess, and it looks like he did well. One night, he's sleeping. And in his sleep, he has a dream. And in his dream, he sees his father. Hadn't seen his father for years. His father had passed away already. And his father says, Moshele, shoin Zeit werden a Yid. Time to become a Yid. Time to live like a Jew. And he woke up in a cold sweat. Hadn't seen his father for years. And the dream was so real. You know, Rav Yehuda Fataya, the great mystic, Rav Yehuda Fataya, passed away about 80 years ago. But he was a great, great mystic. We quoted him numerous times. He says, if any dream is going to be real, it's the one at the end of the night. It's the last one, and sometimes you wake up and it's so real. I've had a number of them. Sometimes you wake up and the dream was so real. I actually have conversations of people from the other world that come and heard very interesting things. And I'll tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. These conversations are clearer to me, even though some of them were years ago, are clearer to me than what I had for supper tonight. Hold on, did I even have supper tonight? No, there you go. There you go. So some of them were just so Yehuda Fataya said that would be the dream when you wake, and it's so clear in your mind. Because if the Eibusher wants to send you a message, he would do it in a way that you would remember it, right? Why would he send you a message and have you forget it? It's going to be in the last dream, right, when you wake up. But sometimes those dreams are like so real. So if any dream has meaning, it's going to be that dream. Okay. But upon him, this guy has a dream. He sees his father. He wakes up. He continues life as usual, but the dream reoccurred a number of times. Until one evening he was performing, entertaining in a big gathering. And all of a sudden he sees the vision of his father. Not during a dream. In real life, he sees the vision. And his father says, Moshele, shoin Zeit werden a Yid, time to become a Yid. He lost his marbles. He took out a gun. He had a revolver. He took out his gun. And he starts shooting at the image. The place, frantic. Everyone runs as fast as they can to get themselves out of there. They see a lunatic, shooting bullets at nothing. Anyhow, he became more frantic than anybody else. So he fled. He fled out of there and he ran. He was going mad. He ran the entire night. He left that town. By morning, he came to a new town. And there were Jews living in the town. So he located the rabbi. And he asked the rabbi, explain to me what's going on. And the rabbi said, listen, you have a shaila in halacha, I can help you. Dreams, I can't interpret dreams. Not too far from here is Lubavitch. And there's a Rebbe in Lubavitch, the Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Shmuel. He can interpret dreams. So he went to Lubavitch and he arranges Yechidus. He walks into the room of the Rebbe Marash. He walks in. As soon as he walks in, the Rebbe Marash looks up and says, Azun soll schießen der Tate? A son should shoot his father? The guy fainted on the spot. Fainted on the spot. And he woke up, he decided he's going to stay there for a bit, and he did until he became one of the Rebbe Marash's chassidim. So, if you look in number 6, it's another Gemara in Brachas. The Gemara says that there are 5 things that are 1 out of 60. There are 5 things that are 1 out of 60. Fire, honey, Shabbos, sleep, and a dream. Fire is 1/60th of Gehenna. By Mitzvah Shem, we're going to have a shir about that at some point. Exactly how hot it gets in Gehenna. Yeah, we're going to turn off the AC for that one. Dvash, honey, is echad mishishim of mon. Honey is 1/60th as sweet as mon. So if honey is too sweet for you, then Shabbos is 1/60th of the world to come. Sleep is 1/60th of death. Chaloim, a dream, is 1/60th of prophecy. Echad mishishim b'nevuah. And then it says there are 6 things, there are siman yafa l'chayla. 6 things that are a good siman for someone that's sick. Eluhein, itush, sneezing is good. Zeya is sweating. Shulshul is diarrhea. Keri is seed comes out. Shein is sleep, and chaloim. A dream actually is very healthy. If someone's ill and they sleep, so the sleep is good, but if they dream, it could be, I think it means even dreaming without sleeping, like hallucinating. Could be it means that. Could like half. It's also beneficial for the mind. That last line, the Rebbe Marash had a wife, Rebbe Rivka, okay? And one night she has a dream. In her dream she sees her mother, who was a daughter of the Mittler Rebbe, and she sees her Zayda, the Mittler Rebbe. And her mother tells her that you, Rivka, and your husband, the Rebbe Marash, should write a Sefer Torah. And her Zayda, the Mittler Rebbe, says, and you'll have a son, and don't forget my name, which will end up being the Rebbe Rashab, who's Shalom Dover. She had that dream. She woke up, she didn't tell anyone. Her mother-in-law, the Rebbe Marash's mother, Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, was ill punkt then. And Rebbetzin Rivka was tending to her, the daughter-in-law. The Tzemach Tzedek, he walks into his wife who was ill, and she says, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. I had a good sleep and I dreamt. So the Tzemach says, you dreamt? And he quoted this Gemara, that sleep is good for a chayla. And then the Tzemach Tzedek said there are 2 days if dreams are legitimate or not. I guess maybe what Shmuel said, you can quote either the pasuk from Baal Yischa, from Zechariah. But then the Tzemach Tzedek raised his eyes, he looked at his daughter-in-law, Rebbetzin Rivka, and he said, Befrat, a good dream will definitely be fulfilled. So you can imagine that, the Tzemach Tzedek knows what she's dreaming. Later she had the dream again, and this time she also saw the Alter Rebbe in the dream. So now she told the Rebbe Marash, her husband, and he told you kept this dream from me? You kept this dream from me? You saw your mother and you saw the Mittler Rebbe? These dreams are nishkein kleinigkeiten. These dreams are serious. These are serious. So someone quoted this Gemara, that a chaloim is good for a chayla. But those are dreams of Rebbes. There's many stories. Listen, a Rebbe has a dream, is a different... But the shaila is even about Yosef's dream. Did Yosef's dream have dvorim b'teilim? Is machlokas the Gemara in the Medrash? The Gemara says the moon was a dover bottle. The Medrash says no, it's Bila. That's a very significant debate, if tzaddikim have dvorim b'teilim in their dreams or not. There is a Abar Benel. The Abar Benel has, in Parshas Miketz, has a long arichas about dreams. And he sets it up. There are three types of dreams. There's one type of dream that it's all rubbish. Could be what you thought about by day. It depends on the food that you eat, right? Different things, different medicines can bring hallucinations. Depends on the things that you eat. Depends on your nature, your lifestyle, and I guess the shadim, you would say. That's rubbish. He said, then there's a step up. There's a type of dream that heavenly forces are trying to send you messages. It's not prophecy. He says this, the Gemara says, and we just saw in number 6, is Echad Mishishim Benavua. A dream is 1/60th of prophecy. It's not rubbish. Concerning the rubbish ones, we say, Divrei Chaloim es lo ma'ilin v'lo meridin. But then you have the one which is Echad Mishishim, it's 1/60th of prophecy. He said, these are kind of heavenly forces trying to send you messages. But it's not yet prophecy.
That would be like the dreams in the Gemara where it says if you have this...
And you want to get interpreted, where interpretation makes a difference in what the dream means, right? And it could be over there we say that it's for sure going to have some Dvarim B'Telem. But then he says, then there's a third medium of dream, where Hashem says, B'chaloim adaber bo. It's a prophecy. When Eibusha spoke to Avimelech, B'chaloim alayla, he comes to Lavan in last week's parsha, and the Gemara says that these were prophecies. After the Matan Torah, Moshe asked Hashem shouldn't rest on Goyish prophets. The Gemara says in Baba Basra. But before Matan Torah, Avimelech, Lavan, these were prophecies. And they were in dreams. But for sure, Yiddish prophets later, the Rambam writes Mefurish that Yiddish prophets basically get their dreams in Chaloimus. That's prophecy. That's not 1/60th. That's prophecy itself. So Abarbanel says, B'chlal, there are 3 levels, and he's myrich about that, a very important source. If you look at number 7, and hold on, you'll see where we're going with this. We're going to get to the halachic issue very soon. In number 7, there's a letter of the Rebbe. Somebody wrote to the Rebbe that have chaloimus which are disturbing them. So the Rebbe says, it's known, and is hinted in the words of Chazal, that what you see by a dream is only the things that you think about. Thoughts you have in your mind, they come back to haunt you at night. The chaloimus are born from batel dika machshavas, from worthless thought that you have during the day. So if you remove the cause, if you diminish the cause, you'll diminish the effect. If these negative, unwanted dreams are a direct result of these undesirable thoughts during the day, so cancel out the thoughts and you'll cancel out the dreams. And he says, since there are other sibbas for dreams, he quotes the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe speaks about the Shadim laughing at you. He said you should be careful by Kriyish Malamita, and that your body should be pure with going to mikveh, Tevilas Ezra, which is going to mikveh after one sees Keri, and make sure the mezuzah on the entrance of your room is kosher. Apparently elsewhere the Rebbe told someone to wear tzitzis at night to protect them from dreams. But upon him here, the Rebbe's mahalach is pretty much that the dreams are meaningless, but they're painful. Okay, so let's see why they come. It comes from where you Vuda house during the day. So if you change that, and some of these other skulas of mikveh and kriyish malamita and the mezuzah, you'll protect yourself from these. The way I understand it is this is a dream that comes from shadim, which divrei chaloimus are rubbish, but they're painful, so let's get rid of them. But in number 9, there's another letter of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe says somebody wrote to him, or that the mother came to the child in a dream. And the Rebbe says you should ascertain if her kavura, if she was properly buried. The mother came to the kid, I don't know what she said, but the Rebbe says you got to ascertain if the kavura was proper and that they didn't do an autopsy on her after she passed. V'loi nutcha, they didn't operate on her after she passed. That could be the reason why the mother is coming to shield the child after, because of an autopsy. And you should also check the mezuzahs. But here the Rebbe doesn't just dismiss the dream. Here it's different. Here you have the mother itself coming. It's more direct, more meaningful. In number 7 was just someone having negative dreams. But this dream, it sounds like, is what the Abarbanel said, is a stage up. This is echad. This is a dream where there could be a message coming to you from heaven. It's 1/60th of prophecy. So the Rebbe says, there's something to check over here. So you see, not all dreams are the same. Go on to the next page. The next page. Join me in number 11. So when it comes to the meaning of dreams, there are different angles to analyze. One of them is, if someone comes to me from the other world, are their words meaningful or not? When Reb Mordechai Bennett came to the Chassam Sofer, he took it seriously and he moved his body. By the way, a woman once asked Reb Moshe Feinstein, my husband came to me in a dream and told me I should bury him somewhere else. And you know what Reb Moshe said? Forget about it. Reb Moshe writes, when a big tzaddik has a dream, it's a true message. A regular person has a dream, even if someone came to you, right? It's still rubbish. The Rebbe said in number 9, when the mother itself comes, it's meaningful. Well, it's different. You don't know what she said over there, and this woman was asking Reb Moshe to move the body, which is a big deal, just based on a dream. Reb Moshe said, Divrei Chalemus are nothing. But that same dream for somebody else, for the Chassam Sofer, was significant. Rabbi Yehuda Assad, the Mari Assad, one of the great, he was Achronim, 200 years ago, a little less, he writes there's a big difference in dreams between the common folk versus the tzaddikim of the generation. The tzaddikim of the generation, they're the shepherds. The shepherds need to receive direction of how to shepherd the flock. The Eibishter wants them to tell them things. One of the ways is through dreams. That's what he says. So it's a big difference of who's getting the prophecy. And that would help understand Rav Moshe's letter, that even though the woman had the same dream the Chassam Sofer had, the Chassam Sofer can act upon it, but not the wife. Interesting. But we do have famous, the Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna, the Zuru, one of the most famous anecdotes about dreams. The Zuru wrote a halachic sefer called Zuru. Why did he call it that name? He says he had a dream about the name Akiva. You write the name Akiva, Ksuva on a get, you want to spell it correctly. Does Akiva end with a Hey or an Aleph? And he had a dream, and they showed him a pasuk. Or Zorua la tzaddik ula yishrei leiv simcha. Light is planted for the tzaddik and simcha for the one who has a straight heart. The last letter of each of the words spells Rabbi Akiva. Is a Reish Rebbe. Zorua is an ayin. La tzaddik is kuf. La yishrei is yud. Leiv is bay. Simcha is a hey. It's Rabbi Akiva with a hey. So he was so excited that he got his answer, and it was mamish like a revelation from heaven. He said, I'm calling my sefer by the name Zorua. By the way, when the Mittler Rebbe met Rabbi Akiva Eiger, he met Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Also, I think it was one of those cities where there were those health springs. I got to go to one of those places. Huh? Who knows who you're going to meet over there, right? So Rabbi Akiva Eiger heard the Mittler Rebbe was there, so he went to greet him, and he was holding a candle. And when he saw the Mittler Rebbe, he held up the candle and he said, Zorua la tzaddik. So the Mittler Rebbe responded, Ula yishrei leiv simcha spells Akiva, and your name is Akiva. Akiva is with a hey. He quoted this verse from the Zorua. So the Zorua of pasken, right, to spell a name right is critical. On Gittin is critical. And he pasken based on a dream. On the shir we had before Sukkot, we had all the ins and outs of lulav and esrog, how you hold them, how you bind them, right? You remember, right, from how boring it was. I thought it was interesting. Okay, anyhow. So it comes out from the Gemara clear. Rabbi Lezer says that the esrog should not be bound with the lulav, the hadassim, and aravas. So yet, right, according to one day, you can hold the lulav and then pick up the esrog. But not only we hold them at the same time, we dafka put them together. We don't bind the esrog with the other three, but we do hold it together. Where does that come from? It comes from Reb Menachem Rikanti, the Rishon, who the Beis Yosef quotes, writes that he had a dream. One of the Baalei Tosfos was visiting him from France. And Reb Menachem Rikanti, who's in Italy, he hosts the Baalei Tosfos. And Reb Menachem Rikanti has a dream the night of Sukkot, first night of Sukkot. He has a dream, probably in the Sukkah. I don't know, he's a big Kabbalist, so maybe he didn't sleep in the Sukkah. He has a dream, and in his dream, he sees that this fellow from France, this big rabbi, was writing the Abish's name, and he wrote a Yud, Hey, and then a Vav. And he didn't write the last Hey. So he asked him, where's the other Hey? He said, in France, this is how we write God's name. And then the Rekanti wakes up. A strange dream. And the next morning, he sees during davening, when the Baal HaTaisos from France was holding the lulav and esrog, he didn't combine them together, he held them separate. The lulav was an adasim arav, so the Yud Hey Vav, and the esrog's the other Hey, and he held them separate. And the Kanti realized that that was the message of the dream, that you need to bring the name of Hashem together. But my father always asked, you're telling me the esrog is the last Hey of Hashem's name? The esrog is the greatest of all the minim, right? It has tam, it has the flavor, it has the taste, it has Torah and mitzvahs. It should be the Yud, the first letter of Hashem's name, not the last Hey. So my father says, yeah, esrog is the greatest, but if it holds itself separate, if it separates itself because I'm too good for the rest, then it plummets to the bottom, becomes the Hey Achrona. Mechoves Halvav is the famous story that the Rebbe told the Talmidim, you guys didn't sin, but because you didn't sin, you've now sinned in the worst Aveda, which is Gaiva. You would be better off doing a different sin and feeling humble because of it. But now that you have a clean slate and you feel so proud about it, that's your ultimate downfall. It's the greatest sin. So when the esrog is held away from the other three, that I'm too good to join the masses, then it tumbles down, becomes the Hey Achrona. Either way, this is halacha. Everyone holds it together, right? Everyone holds it together. And it's only from a dream, the Rekant, it's only from a dream. So it seems like dreams do have some halachic validity. In number 11, there is a letter from the Noid of Yehuda. This is not the Noid of Yehuda himself, Rabbi Yechezkel Landau, rather his son, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel Landau, a number of letters printed in the Noid of Yehuda are from his son, Rabbi Shmuel Landau, who we just quoted recently in the shir about plagiarism. And he's very much against it. So I was going to quote this actually without his name, but not him. So there was a very interesting discussion at the times of the Rishonim about a certain fish called the barbuta from Barbados. No, that's just but the barbuta fish. And the issue was that the fish doesn't have any scales. The question is, maybe while it's in the water it has scales. There's a lot of dinim about scales, not so posh, which scales work, which don't. And there was a big shayla about the barbuta. So one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Ephraim, was matir the barbuta, and then he had a dream. And in the dream he was shown that he was feeding people shrotzim. And he realized that he was being reprimanded in heaven for being matir this fish. It's brought the Rosh in Masechta Avodah Zarah in the end of the second parak. In the Hagoy Sashri, it's brought there. But here says Rav Shmuel Landau, V'amashe Kosavti, I wrote about the Pri Chodosh, that the Pri Chodosh says it could be Tosfos has another reason why they allow the barbuta. And I said, you know what the Pri Chodosh meant? That maybe Tosfos actually saw the fish, that they saw when the barbuta was caught in the water, that the kaskashim fall off as it leaves the water. So the Pri Chodosh says maybe Tosfos has some other proof why it's kosher. And I contended, says Rav Shmuel Landau, that maybe the Pri Chodosh means Tosfos saw with their own eyes. It was Nisamis, it became true that they saw it. So Hikshus, this guy asked Shmuel Landau, Im Kain, if it's really true that it has, so why did Rabbeinu Ephraim have a dream that he has to make it usher? Like that Goy Sashri brings him Masechta Avodah Zarah. But if the Baalei Tosfos are saying they saw with their eyes it's kosher, how could Rabbeinu Ephraim have a dream that it's usher? This is what this guy writes to Rav Shmuel Landau. Says Rav Shmuel, you know what I have to say about this? Divrei chaloimus loy mailin v'loy meridin. Dreams are worthless. You have a dream that something's usher, mutter is worthless. Umei olam, I never heard you could bring a proof from Baala chaloimus. Chaloimus shav yidaberun. Chaloimus speak vanity. Rabbeinu Ephraim was a big tzaddik, a big chassid, and he was concerned to the dream. That it was told in the dream he was matir sheretz. And he was worried maybe the dream is real. And what could it mean? The only thing he could explain it would be the barbuta fish. And he was toiler on the fact he was mat to the barbuta. That's what's going on in Ben Ephraim's mind. But says of Shmuel Landau, if my contention is true that Tosus and Takas saw that the fish had scales in water, it just lost them as it was removed, and if Rabbeinu Ephraim would know that this fish had kaskashim, like it was true to the Baalei Tosus, then his dream would be meaningless. He would have said, I don't know, the dream means something else. He would have found a different pitar and a different interpretation for the dream. Alinian Acher, or something else he was matri. He's probably matri many things. I don't know, some other thing. So you want to bring a proof from a dream that's Yov, from a Chaloim, Hevelhu, Ein by Mamish. If you're not sure if the fish itself is really kosher or not, and then you have a dream, so fine. But if you really believe the fish is kosher, if he would know it had kaskasim in the water, the dream is worthless. And he says, I have a shaila. Why was Rabbeinu Ephraim the only one that had the dream? Why didn't the Baal HaChaloim come to right, the Indian chief, right, the famous, why didn't... But why did the Baal HaChaloim not come to the Baalei Tosus, to Rabbeinu Tam? What about all those that said the barbut is okay besides Rabbeinu Ephraim? Rabbeinu Tam, all those that said it's okay. How come none of them had this dream? And to reveal to them, and they should figure what to do with the dream. And then he says, by the way, look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin, we saw about the Meiser Sheni, and the Ramah paskens in Shulchan Aruch as well, that if the Baal HaChaloim says that it's X amount of money in their Meiser, it was a story and the rabbi said the Chaloimus are worthless. So he is learning, like the Ran, that story in Sanhedrin is the source material that dreams are worth, not like the Rashbats, that only there was a money case, but elsewhere they're meaningful. No, they're bechlal worthless. That's the take of Rab Shmuel Landau. Actually, Lushitosa, he has a sefer called Shivas Tzion, where he writes, according to me, that dreams are worthless, so why by Chayim should you be concerned? He said, Chayim is different. Chayim is a sakon on your life. When your life's in danger, you don't take chances. But otherwise, dreams are worthless. That's his take. Reb Aryeh Leib Tzintz, he became very, B'chayev, he was one of the great Gedolim, times of the Alter Rebbe and Mittler Rebbe. Before he passed away, he was lying there surrounded by his great students. The Chedushi Harim was one of his great students. You could see from the Rabbi Vermela Chechanover. He was from the greatest minds of that time, Rabbi Aryeh Leib Tzintz. He was a student / friend of the Noida B'Yehuda, probably more of a friend. The Noida B'Yehuda writes beautiful things about him, even when he was a young man. Before Rabbi Aryeh Leib Tzintz passed away, right before, maybe the last thing he said, those that will be involved in printing my Sfarim, I will be the defendant for lawyer for you in heaven. And one of his students said, Rebbe, how could you guarantee that? And he said, if I wasn't able to, I wouldn't. And with that, he passed away. There's actually a big movement for years about printing his Sfarim. There's a whole mochain of people that print his Sfarim. There's always manuscripts for reprinting the Sfarim, reprint it. Because if he guarantees your attorney upstairs, it's worth it to cash in. He has a famous letter, a sefer Meshivas Nafesh, which is Tshuvas Responsa. In his sefer Meshivas Nafesh, Chelik Beis Siman Lamed Hey, he's dealing with an aguna issue of a man who had disappeared in the water. Very quickly, if somebody disappears in mayim she'ein lohen soif, in water that you can't see the end of it, someone was in the river or in a huge lake or the ocean and goes underwater, you don't see them come up. But who knows, the current may have taken them. You never really know what happened. Proof is they send search teams to go look for them, right? And they originally are rescue teams until they're recovery teams. But originally you hope the person's alive, which indicates that just because you don't see them, there's stories all the time of currents and people showing up somewhere else. So one witness or two witnesses saw the guy go under, didn't see the guy come up. But it could be he came up somewhere else, I don't know. So the halacha is the woman cannot get married. B'di'evid, if she did get married, she's allowed to stay with the new husband. Okay. How does this work? Kids are kosher, as long as the first husband doesn't come back. How does this work? So there's an idea that a woman, while she's married, she has a chezkas age, a status quo of being married. In addition, the husband has a chezkas chaim. He has a status quo of being alive. Now he's disappeared. So even though most people in that circumstance would have died, right? Most people that disappear under the water and you can't see them don't make it. There's a slim minority that miraculously survive. The Torah always follows majority. Roiv is always better than chazaka. That's the general rule. But here there's two chazakas. There's the fact she has a status quo of being married that you're trying to break. He also has a chezkas chaim, a status quo of being alive. Because the Roiv is trying to break two chazakas, the chachamim were machmir, and you're talking about an eishes ish, the chachamim were machmir that not minat Torah she can remarry. The rabbis were machmir she shouldn't. Because once you're matir that, then imagine a river where if someone goes under the water, it's for sure they've been taken downstream, and it's like almost, who knows, very likely the guy survived. So the Chum said, Bechlal, in these scenarios, we don't want her getting remarried, but if she does, she can stay married. There are some Rishonim that believe that if the guy doesn't show up for a couple of years later, that's further evidence he's not alive, and between that and the fact that most people wouldn't survive what he went through would be enough for her to remarry. And that's a big shayla in the laws of Agunas, whatever. So in this case over here by Rabbi Leib Tzins, it was a story. One of the details was that the deceased came into a dream to his mother and told her details of where they could find remnants of him. They found some clothes exactly where he said in the dream. Exactly where he described in the dream, they did find some clothes exactly there. So the question is, can you allow the woman now to remarry? Because the man came in a dream and said that he died, and it's a true dream. Haraya, some of the simonim gave checked out. He also came in a dream to another woman as well. Two people had the dream. So Aryeh Leib Tzins writes, he says, everyone thinks dreams are worthless, and they're wrong. He says, B'chal, people have gotten it wrong. In number 13, he says, about this dream that the woman had, the mother of the Nitva of Chaim Yudel, it seems to me that it's not empty words. And in this thing, Tovu Be'inshi, people are mistaken. People always say, Divrei Chaloimus loy ma'ilin v'murin. Everyone is wont to quote, Divrei Chaloimus are worthless. He said it's not true. Be'emes, after proper analysis, I think it's not true. Lav Mulsas Utrasihu, a dream like this is valuable. And he's going to use it to be mat to the woman. Together with other, but this is going to be. And in number 14, he says, hang on a second. He says, the Gemara in Bracha says, right, Rava said that a true dream is through a malach, a false dream is through a shade. In this dream, Chaim Yudel told his mother, by God is alts melech, by God everything is possible. Now, if this really was him, then this is considered al yidei malach. This is like a real revelation. If it's not, then the whole thing was just false, right? It's just a joke, then it's al yidei shade. But the man said God's name. Don't you know the Gemara says in Megillah Gemiri, loy mafki shem shemaim levatala, even a shade would not say the name of God in vain. So if this was a shade causing, if this was a prank, if this dream was a prank like all shadim dreams are, he wouldn't say by God to Alzheimer's. But hang on, he didn't say Hashem's name in Hebrew, he said God in Yiddish. So he continued, look what he says. He says, you think it's a different language? Don't you know the Shach in Yeridea, that if you make an oath with saying Hashem's name in another language is binding? And it also seems to me, if you say God's name in another language for no reason, it's considered saying it in vain, even though it's balaz. I'll prove it to you. Look at this beautiful raya. The Gemara says in Brachas, if you say, blessed be the merciful one, the master of this bread, you're Yaitza. You're Yaitza benching. So the Gemara asked, we know this already. There's a Mishnah, you could bench in any language. So what does that teach you? Hare, you're allowed to say a bracha in a different language. So I have a question. He says, whenever you're not sure if you made a bracha or not, what do we say? Sofek brachas lahakal. But you have another eitzah. Just make the bracha in another language. Because the Gemara says in brachas it works. And if it's not considered saying Hashem's name in vain, you have nothing to lose. Whenever you're not sure if you should make a bracha, just make a bracha in a different language. It works. You're to the bracha, and if you don't need it, who cares? I didn't say Hashem's name in vain. It must be. It's considering saying Hashem's name in vain. So when this Chaim Yudel told his mother in the dream, God's name, Gott, in Yiddish, can't be a shade, said a Levatola. So he says it must be. This was not from a shade. It must be. This was real. And therefore you're allowed to rely on this because since the guy disappeared in Mayim, which has no soif, which is only an issue d'Rabbanan, I want to be mekel. And then he said, I know this is something new. This is new. This is drastic. And people will question, how could you use such a heter? Divrei chalomis make no difference. He says, V'lo ya'am binas, those that say chalomis are worthless, are foolish. They don't understand that when you need evidence of two witnesses, yes, you can use a dream. But if all you need is like a simon, if a case where one witness is believed, then you're allowed to use dreams as well. And then he says at the end, don't you know, we saw this already in number 3, if the Balach of tomorrow you're going to die, you should daven. That means it's serious, even though it's a dream. He finishes off by saying, I want another rabbi to agree with me over here, because this is an inyan mechudesh. I don't think anyone before me has ever said such a thing. That you could use the simon and the signs given in a dream to be matir a woman aguna. So this is a well-known letter because this is out of the box completely.
What year was it?
Times of the Mitzler Rebbe, passed away early 1800s. Early 1800s passed away. So, where this is quickly going to take us, at the last stretch of the shir, is that we had a shir a couple weeks ago, Bechlal, paskening based on Ruach HaKodesh. Paskening based on Ruach HaKodesh. And we divided between using Ruach HaKodesh to know facts versus using Ruach HaKodesh to decide a halacha. The Ravid says he knows that the hadas at the top was chipped off is kosher because Ruach HaKodesh appeared in his base medrash. He knows what the Machlokes in Gemara, Chachamim Rab Tarfon. He had a dream. And the Rabbi Yosef Ibn Lev, the Ma'arin Lev says, the Ravid holds you're allowed to pasken based on Ruach HaKodesh. You're allowed to use a baskol, like passing like Beis Hillel versus Beis Shammai. Where the Gemara in Eidevin says, a baskol said, halacha kabez, we follow that. I, by Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, by the oven. There, Rabbi Eliezer summons the baskol to his defense and we was disregarded. That's because the majority of Chachamim were against it. They said the Tanner is Tomei. So the Torah says you follow majority, so we know what to do. You can't follow the baskol. But if you're not sure what the halacha is, you're trying to decide, the Ma'arin Lev says the Ravid believes you could use Ruach HaKodesh. If you remember, the Kapos tomorrow vehemently disagrees and says you can never use Ruach HaKodesh to determine halacha. He says when the Ravid says Ruach HaKodesh appeared in our base medrash as a figure of speech, he meant that his pshat and his explanation is so clear to him, it's like he heard it from heaven. It's just a figure of speech. The Chida in his Birkei Yosef on the laws of Sukkah says he thinks the Kapos tomorrow is wrong because Reb Chaim Vital and the Marin Lev and others understand the Ravid literally, that he meant his Poshut Ruach HaKodesh appeared, and that gave him the psak. So there was a debate, Bechlal, can you pasken based on Ruach HaKodesh? And then there was another issue about using Ruach HaKodesh to ascertain facts, which the Kapos Tmorim was against as well. For example, when the Mon would teach us, if the extra dose of Mon came to a certain tent, then you knew that the baby that they're fighting over belonged to that tent. The Kapos Tmorim said you can't even do that. You can't use Ruach HaKodesh even to determine anything in Allah, even just for FYI, to figure out information. The Chido himself vehemently disagrees with that. Just quickly, this is a quick executive summary of that shir. The Chido says when it comes to ascertaining facts, Ruach HaKodesh is perfectly allowed. Like the Rashba says, that's how David brought back Michal. Through Ruach HaKodesh, he knew that she hadn't touched, or Palti ben Laish hadn't touched her during the years they lived together. The Chido says to ascertain facts is fine. But to know what the halacha is based on spiritual intuition, that he hears the Kapos Tmorim's argument, and that he hears there might be an issue with. But the Marin Lev says the Ravid himself holds no, you're even allowed to pasken based on Ruach HaKodesh. So that same issue comes here about dreams. Using dreams to ascertain information, well, there's a Targum Yonason I mentioned. The Targum Yonason says in Parshas Noach, how did Noach know it was Chum that either castrated him or sodomized him? Sidus order, he was Ravai. How does he know it was him? He curses Cham's son Canaan. How did he know it was Chum? Noach was shikr. He was drunk, he was shikr. How did he know? The Targum Yonason said he had a dream. Maybe while he was shikr, he was dreaming. But because in his dream he knew it was Chum, he acted upon it. And he cursed Cham's son. Now that dream, it's not like he dreamt, what do you do with someone that castrates you? That wasn't what the dream was, who was it that castrated? It was FYI. But what about dreaming though, actual halacha? Over here by the Maral Tzunt, but also the dream was just for information. The dream wasn't the halachic shayla, the dream is to use this as another evidence. Through the dream, the woman got evidence that the guy died and got simonim for some of his clothes. It's just part of the evidence. It's more like the for your information type of thing. But Rabbeinu Ephraim had a dream that he fed people shiratzim, and he said, "Oh, the fish to barbuta." So that's a dream about a halacha. That's a dream about a halacha. So it's well known there's a sefer called Shailus Utshuvas Min HaShamayim. Rabbi Yankov of Maravi, one of the Rishonim, is also nicknamed Rabbeinu Tam. Not the famous Rabbeinu Tam, but anyone called Yaakov can be nicknamed Rabbeinu Tam. And he has a whole sefer of questions he asked from heaven. So the Chidah, in his Shema G'dolim, in his entry on Rabbi Yankov, he has a long, famous arichas. What's going on over here? This sefer, he would ask questions and receive answers from heaven, and they would pasken based on the answers he got from heaven. It's mamish like the Marin Lev and the Ravid that I got Ruach HaKodesh, so I pasken. The issue is it goes against the Mefurish Rambam. There's a very frightening Rambam. Look at number 15. Says the Rambam in number 15. The Rambam in number 15 says it's clear in Torah, which is a mitzvah which lasts forever, that Torah will never change. It won't change. Nothing will be detracted. Nothing will be added. As it says, Hashem says, Moshe says that everything I command you today, you should be shomer, don't add, don't take away. Halamadata says the Rambam, the words of Torah, the mitzvahs to fulfill them forever. It'll never change. Chuk Hashem dersechem. And it says, Loi bashamayim hi, which the Rambam uses to mean that Torah is no longer in heaven. It's been given to earth in the time of Moshe. No later prophet can come and be mechadish dover. Ein navi rashai lechadish dover meyata. No, a prophet can't come and institute something new. Now the Rambam learns it from the pasuk Loi b'shamayim. It's no longer in heaven. The Gemara learns it from a different pasuk. There's a lot of discussion about that. But the Rambam comes in verse 17, and he says a whopping halacha. If a prophet came and he wanted to uproot something that we have a tradition about, going back to Holy Moses, or he said, listen to this, about a certain halacha, Hashem commanded me that this is the halacha. The halacha follows a certain opinion. There was a debate between the Chachomim. A Navi comes and says, God told me the halacha follows Reb Shimon. He's a false Navi, he gets strangled to death. Even if he did a miracle, and even if the opinion he paskened like actually is the halacha. Why? Why did he get strangled? Because he must be a false Navi. Why is he a false Navi? Because the Eibishter would never tell this to a prophet. I'm telling you who the halach is. Because he's contradicting the Torah. The Torah says, Loi b'shamayim. Here the Rambam takes Loi b'shamayim very far. It's when it says Loi b'shamayim, the Eibush is telling us that halacha will never be decided from heaven either. I will never tell a Navi who the halach is, who the halacha follows. And if a Navi says, I told him, he's a liar, and therefore he gets strangled to death. So says the Chidah, the case of the Rambam is Mamash Rabbi Yankov of Marvi. God told, the Malach told me in a dream, this is the halacha. So the Chidah says in number 15, let me go back to my first question, that it's clear from the Rambam that Loi b'shamayim, he goes so far, that even if a Navi rules the right way, he didn't change anything, he wasn't Gerei or Moshe, he said the right halacha. And he said that a certain guy, Svar, is emes. You kill him because he's a false Navi. So then I don't understand, Rabbi Yankov HaNizkar, in all of his halachas, and when he has fakus and pluktus of rabbis, he always asks from heaven, what's the halacha? And they respond. And Bavadai, he acted upon it, or else what was the point of the book? He and those that follow him acted upon it. But it's not in heaven. And if a prophet says, God told me, you kill him. So number 10, the Chidah first says he thinks they must disagree. The Chidah says in number 10, he thinks, firstly, it must be that Rabbi Yankov of Marvi and the Ravid, the way the Marin Lev understands him, who passed up Biduch HaKodesh, disagree with the Rambam. They don't take Loi B'Shemayim that far. Look what he says in number 10. Ochen, in order to appease ourselves, I'll explain that Rabbi Yankov of Marvi and the Ravid, who says he had Ruach HaKodesh, they don't agree with the Rambam. They believe that if heaven tells you who the Allah is like, you follow them. And the proof is because we follow Beis Hillel over Beis Shammai because of a Basko. By Rabbi Eliezer, we didn't. Tosfos and Eruvin there said, because that was a faulty Basko, because Rabbi Eliezer summoned it, and also was against the Rabbim, so that was a faulty Basko, but anywhere else you can go to heaven. So they partially. So the Rambam says the Navi gets killed. According to Rav and Yankov Marvi, this guy is the Av Bezin. He's the Nasi Adar, he's the greatest scholar. The Rambam says the guy gets murdered. The Ravid says this guy is the greatest scholar in town. That's one option he gives. In number 19, though, the Chidah, go to number 19, the Chidah says he has another explanation for this. Inami, this is what he says in number 19. This is also very groundbreaking. It could be they don't disagree with the Rambam. It could be number 19. Efsher could be that the Ravid and Rabbi Yankov of Marvi, the Shilas Tshuvas Min HaShamayim. You ever saw the book? Reb Reuven Margolis put out the book with footnotes. Unbelievable. And it's a great introduction where he speaks a lot about dreams as well. It could be right in Tel Aviv, exactly. Not Stam a librarian. He was you say, He actually quotes Reb Ephraim Zalman Margolis, who had a dream about Koyanim. No. He had a dream about what does it mean you get drunk ad lo yoda. And the pshat was he had in his dream, ad means until, but not including. You drink and drink until the point that you wouldn't know, but not actually including that point. That was the pshat he had in his dream. And he writes it in his commentary. Anyhow, okay. Receiving pshatim in dreams, that you find all the time. What else is a tzaddik in a dream about, right? The question is, can you act halachically based on it? That's the real question. So number 19, the Chidah, could be they agree with the Rambam, that if a Navi Taka said, God told me that this and this person's right, it could be that's a simon, the guy's a liar and he gets killed. Because Hashem doesn't want us to learn from prophets, rather from Chachamim, who bring a raya to them. The Ran, by the way, writes in one of his drashas, why is it the Eibush relies on Chachamim more than prophets? Because Torah's intellectual ideas, they have to be intellectually discussed. Once anyone could say, God told me, then any prophet, right, then who knows? Everyone's going to come and say, oh, I'm a real prophet and God told me this. If you need to bring a good argument to bolster your claim, so then it'll be transparent immediately if it's a true argument or not. That's what the Ran writes in one of his drashas. So, Omnam, however, if there was a debate in the Sanhedrin or between rabbis and it remained a stalemate, they can't figure out who the halach is like, then it could be the Rambam would agree a Baskol can work. Loi B'Shemayim. This far, Loi B'Shemayim when you have another avenue. When there's no other avenue, you fall back on the Eibishter. Then it could be the Rambam would agree you could use Ruach HaKodesh or a Baskol that the Rabbi Yankel's right. Because the Sanhedrin and the Shoftim can't agree one side or the other, and the Sfaris in both directions. And when the Kohanim and the Shoftim can't be Machriya, then we go to a Baskol and Ruach HaKodesh. He says that could be the Pshat in Rabbi Yankov of Marvi and the Ravid. When the Ravid said he had Ruach HaKodesh for the different halachas he brings it, it's all cases where there's different perspectives. And it's very hard to know what the bottom line is. So the Chidah says it could be that the Rambam would also agree you could use divine information. Ruach HaKodesh, dreams, Baskol, a voice from heaven, all these things. It's only when you're able to work it out in Bezdin, like there's a majority or there's a way to decide like one person, that's when the Rambam is arms up that you don't follow the prophet. So the Chidah is trying to find a way that the Ravid and Rag Marvi fits with the Rambam, which would mean Shailas Tshuvas Min HaShamayim means that every question he asked, he knew there was already arguments back and forth. They spent the whole day in Beis Medrash trying to figure it out. It ended up in stalemate. So there were thousands of such cases. 95% of them they worked out, 5% they didn't. So then he would write a dream at night and he got an answer from heaven. And so too, whenever the Ravid invokes Ruach HaKodesh, which is rarely, would be the same situation. That's what the Chidah says. In his second, the first option was they taka disagree with the Rambam. It's taka machloikas, which is quite a broad machloikas then. But so accordingly, when the Maral Tzunz wants to use this woman's dream to allow the Aguna to remarry, according to the first way of the Chidah, I don't know, maybe the Rambam won't allow it. The Rambam says you can use dreams, although the Rambam's talking about to figure out a halacha, not information. But so according to the second answer of the Chidah, even the Rambam holds, when you have no other way to ascertain, you're allowed to go to heavenly gates. And then maybe a dream would be okay. The issue with the dream is maybe it's false, right? You have to know that it's true. But as far as the fact that it's supernatural data, supernatural information, according to the second answer of the Chidah, that's fine. When you can't figure it out down here, then Loi Bashamayim he ends. Then you do say Bashamayim. The Rebbe number 20 has a very important take on the whole matter. The Rebbe number 20 to Sicha, this point is from a Kishisa Sicha in Chelik Lamed Vav. It's known that Tanoim and Amirayim pasken their dinim based on the source of their soul. Like Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai comes from Gvura, Beis Hillel comes from Chesed. So Beis Shammai is Machmeh, Beis Hillel is Mekel. L'chayr Torah loy b'shamayim. If Torah is not in heaven, how could you pasken based on the spiritual makeup of your soul? So the Rebbe's answer, famous answer, that comes from the earlier Rabbeim, that there was a spiritual makeup of their soul, right? But they would analyze the halachic issue at hand with all of their intellect, and they would reach a conclusion. So when they said something, it wasn't blindly that this is how I see it in heaven. It's how I see it down here on earth. That it was after his boinus, and that's why Taka sometimes Beis Shammai is sometimes Mekbel, sometimes Macher, right? It's because they really study the case down here. It was after there is boinus and the Igi in their mind, based on the way the Lamat and the Shom is begufim, which means they didn't suffice that, listen, I feel it in my soul. But they toiled with their Havonis and Havonis HaSeichel until that's how they actually felt down here. According to the Rebbe, if your idea begins with Ruach HaKodesh, but then you internalize it, it's no longer an issue of Loi B'Shamayim. So accordingly, this is actually another answer for the Ravid. When the Ravid says, I had Ruach HaKodesh, the Kappas Tmom screamed through the roof, you can't pasken based on heaven. It began with a message from heaven, but then the Ravid said, I studied the topic, and it became clear to me. So according to the Rebbe, that's no longer Loi B'Shamayim. So it's another approach in the Ravid. To plug it into the Yankiv of Marvi is difficult, because he asked questions to heaven, they gave him the answer, and then he paskened. It's like, we don't know there was another stage of him internalizing. He just took the words of what he received, and he paskened that way. If you say he internalized it, each time he internalized it in his mind, and Taka, he became convinced that was, so then, if that's what happened, it would be okay too. The Rebbe actually goes also about plagiarism. And the Rebbe says, if you have an idea that's sourced elsewhere, but you understand it so well that it becomes yours, you no longer have to quote the source. And this doesn't fit in with anything we learned in the Shir about plagiarism, so I didn't quote it there. But the Rebbe in this Sikha, which is a plagiarism Sikha, he mentions this same idea. Once you understand the point that it's your idea, it's yours. It's yours! You don't have to, you're not a thief if you're only a thief if you don't fully internalize it. The moment it becomes your idea, no longer are you mechuyev to attribute it to the author. Which would also defend the Abar Benel, who writes in his Nachlas Ovis and Pirkei Ovis that people take from each other, and there he said it's okay. This will be an explanation. That if you really understand, it becomes one with you, it becomes your idea. It's like Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, Olav Shalom, who was a great Rosh Hashiva Noli Torah, he wants to ask a kasha, and someone said that should be Kiveger's kasha. He said, no, this is my kasha. It's the same question, but I'm asking it. I'm not telling you Kiveger's kasha. This is my kasha. Anyhow, okay, we'll end over here.